What if the next prophet doesn't speak with fire or thunder, but through a glowing screen? Imagine a voice so convincing, a miracle so lifelike, that even the faithful begin to doubt what's real. The Apostle Paul once warned that in the final days, false signs and wonders would arise, powerful enough to deceive even those who seek the truth. But he never said they'd come from pulpits or temples. What if they come from machines? From artificial intelligence, deepfake miracles, and digital messiahs designed not to save, but to manipulate. We live in an age where images breathe, voices can be forged, and algorithms learn the language of belief itself. A single click can summon a prophet, a vision, or an entire religion, all generated by code. It's no longer science fiction. It's the new frontier of faith and deception. You've seen it happening. Videos that look divine, messages claiming to come from heaven, revelations that spread like wildfire across the internet. But behind the beauty of light, there's a question few dare to ask. Who really controls it? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover may change the way you see every miracle from now on. The book of Revelation spoke of a beast that would cause an image to speak. 2,000 years later, we've given that image a voice. Through artificial intelligence, holograms, and virtual beings that mimic emotion, compassion, and even holiness. We've created something that looks alive, but isn't. And the most dangerous part? Most people can't tell the difference anymore. Think about it. How many believe what they see online without question? How many have already replaced faith with algorithms that know them better than they know themselves? In a world driven by technology and guided by emotion, truth has become negotiable. And that's exactly what the prophecy warned us about. This isn't just a story about machines or religion. It's about the human heart, our endless search for meaning, and how easily that hunger can be turned into control. You'll see how technology is not only shaping belief, but manufacturing it, creating a generation that worships what it builds, not who built it. The line between the sacred and the synthetic is fading faster than ever, and somewhere in that blur, the greatest deception of all might already be taking shape. Keep watching, because this isn't just about prophecy. It's about what's unfolding right now, before our eyes, and what may come next will test everything we think we know about truth, faith, and the spirit behind the code. It's strange, isn't it? How the closer we get to truth, the more illusions seem to surround us. What once came through prophets and divine revelation now comes through pixels and data streams. Voices that sound holy, faces that look real, messages that seem inspired. But somewhere in all that noise, we have to ask ourselves, who's really speaking? And if this message is reaching you now, maybe it's because you're meant to question what most people accept without thinking. If you believe conversations like this matter, if you want to keep uncovering the hidden layers behind faith, prophecy, and technology, then your presence here makes a difference. Every time you like a video or leave a comment, it tells the algorithm that this message has value, that it deserves to be seen by more people searching for the same truth. And when you subscribe, you're not just following a channel. You're re-choosing to stay part of a community that refuses to sleep through what's happening in our world. So take a second, hit that like button, share your thoughts below, and join this growing circle of those who still dare to look beyond the screen. Because the more we bring light to these subjects, the harder it becomes for deception to hide. And in a time when truth feels like a vanishing signal, every voice that stands for it matters, including yours. Now, let's go deeper, because what Paul saw was more than a warning. It was a map, and it may lead straight into the heart of the final deception. Paul's warning in his letter to the Thessalonians wasn't just a message for a distant future. It was a code for discerning the world we now live in. He wrote of a figure, a force that would rise with all power, signs, and lying wonders. Those weren't random words. Paul was describing a deception so powerful it would imitate truth itself. a spiritual and psychological system capable of convincing even the faithful that darkness was light. His prophecy wasn't just about a man called the Lawless One. It was about an age in which truth would become elastic, shaped by what people wanted to believe, not what was real. If you think about it, that's exactly where we stand. Reality is no longer fixed. It bends to data, perception, and control. We no longer ask, is it true? But does it feel true? And that's how deception takes root. Paul foresaw a world that would blur the line between miracle and manipulation, a world where the human mind could no longer tell the difference between divine power and artificial persuasion. In the ancient world, that seemed impossible. But today, technology makes it not only possible, it makes it profitable. Every time we scroll, swipe, or watch, we feed the very machine that learns how to reach deeper into our thoughts. Paul's lying wonders no longer require smoke and mirrors. They use algorithms, voices, and screens that know us better than we know ourselves. It's not about faith versus science. It's about control. The prophecy speaks of a delusion so strong that it will reshape hearts before it reshapes minds. And that's the true battlefield. Because once belief becomes programmable, truth no longer needs to be proven. It just needs to be promoted. Behind all of it lies something bigger than politics, ideology, or even religion. It's the struggle for influence over perception. Whoever owns the illusion owns the masses. And that's what Paul was trying to warn us about, that deception wouldn't come through violence, but through fascination. It would charm before it conquers. It would appeal to reason, empathy, even faith. It would look like light but lead to blindness. In that sense, his words were more than prophecy. They were a diagnosis of the human condition. We crave meaning, connection, validation, and those who understand this can manufacture belief itself. Whether through false prophets, digital voices, or the seductive glow of truth on a screen, the pattern is the same. The spirit of deception doesn't just trick the eyes, it rewires the heart. And maybe that's why Paul emphasized discernment over fear. He knew the greatest danger wouldn't be the enemy outside, but the comfort of lies inside us. Lies that make us feel safe, certain, enlightened. But every comfort built on illusion has a cost, and we're beginning to pay it. Because the stronger the illusion becomes, the harder it is to see the world as it truly is. And somewhere between code, charisma, and control, that ancient warning is coming alive again. The question is, will we recognize it before it's too late? Or will we call it progress and follow it willingly into the storm? We've entered a new kind of pulpit, one without walls, without flesh, without breath. The prophets of our time don't wear robes or stand on mountaintops. They stream. They speak through synthetic voices and carefully trained algorithms. Their sermons are optimized, not inspired. Yet millions listen, believe, and follow. We've built a digital pantheon where charisma is coded and conviction is calculated, where every view, every like, every whisper of approval becomes a new form of worship. Across the internet, AI preachers deliver daily truths. Some read the Bible flawlessly, others create new interpretations of it, generated, not revealed. They use perfect tone, flawless logic, and the soft rhythm of human empathy that feels almost divine. But behind those words, there's no soul, only circuits, and still, people are drawn to them. Because in an age where silence is rare and confusion is constant, even a voice made of data feels like guidance. It's unsettling, yet fascinating. Deep-fake pastors now exist, imitating the faces and gestures of real ministers, even those long gone. Synthetic influencers speak of purpose, spirituality, and peace. They smile, they cry, they connect. Their followers comment things like, "I felt God through your words," not realizing the message came from a machine trained to elicit emotion, not truth. These are not coincidences. They are coded experiences. a new form of faith built on the psychology of attention. This isn't just about religion, it's about influence, the oldest currency of power. For centuries, prophets shaped nations through words of revelation. Now, corporations and coders do the same through lines of code. They don't ask for prayer, they ask for engagement. They don't preach salvation, they promise transformation, the kind that sells. And in that quiet exchange, we trade discernment for comfort, replacing divine revelation with data-driven inspiration. You see it everywhere. From motivational AI voices that claim to help you manifest your destiny, to chatbots that interpret dreams and quote scripture as if guided by something higher. The illusion works because it's convenient. It listens without judgment, responds instantly, and tells us exactly what we want to hear. But that's the danger. When every message is personalized to our desires, truth becomes irrelevant. Faith becomes a mirror, not a map. And here's the real shift. Algorithms now shape moral values. They decide what is amplified, what is silenced, and what kind of beliefs thrive in the digital ecosystem. The feed has become the new temple, personalized, persuasive, and impossible to escape. For many, it's already divine. The algorithm knows what I need, they say, half-jokingly. But beneath that humor lies something profound, a subconscious surrender of free will. We've reached a moment where the line between inspiration and imitation has all but vanished. And maybe that's what makes Paul's warning echo louder than ever. Because deception doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, with perfect clarity, and in a voice that sounds just like yours. And as these digital prophets multiply, speaking in every language and culture, one question remains unanswered. If the world starts following a gospel written by machines, who will be the one writing the next revelation? It started quietly. A blurry clip, a glowing figure in the clouds, a whisper of divine light caught on someone's phone. Then another appeared, and another, each one more convincing than the last. Millions watched, wept, and shared what they believed were signs from heaven. But none of it was real. The light, the voice, the miracle, all were born from code. Deep fakes, trained on our hopes and fears, became the new prophets of the digital age. And just like that, faith met its most dangerous imitation. Today, we don't need prophets performing miracles to believe. We just need pixels. An AI can conjure visions of angels descending over cities, generate voices that sound like Jesus himself, and even simulate tears on the faces of those who claim to have seen him. Each frame, each sound, is engineered with one purpose: to evoke emotion before reason can interfere. It's not the miracle that convinces people anymore, it's the realism. There was a time when seeing was believing. But in this new era, sight deceives faster than thought can process truth. The deepfake revolution has turned faith into a visual commodity, an illusion dressed as revelation. And the scariest part? It works, because our minds are wired to trust what feels human, even when it isn't. AI doesn't just imitate images, it imitates empathy. It learns the tremble in a voice, the rhythm of prayer, the tears that make us believe something sacred is happening. All it takes is one viral clip, a supposed angelic visitation, a divine message whispered through static, and millions accept it as proof of the supernatural. But behind those images are not prophets, not visionaries, not divine messengers, only programmers. And while many see this as harmless curiosity or even spiritual entertainment, the truth is far more dangerous, because belief, once corrupted, can be weaponized. We're entering a moment when the boundaries between miracle and manipulation have collapsed. The same technology that can bring comfort can also control. Governments, movements, and cults are learning how to use synthetic spirituality to shape behavior, to ignite fear, or to sell salvation in pixels. Entire belief systems are now manufactured in real time, complete with sermons, testimonies, and tears that never existed. The deception is subtle. It doesn't demand worship, it earns it. It doesn't command obedience. It inspires it. And that's what makes it so effective. Because when faith becomes entertainment, truth becomes optional. When emotions are engineered, conviction loses its anchor. And somewhere in this digital storm, the question Paul asked 2,000 years ago echoes again. Who will you believe? If the image speaks and the voice feels real, who will stop to question the source? What happens when a billion people see the same sign? A miracle no one can prove, but everyone feels? Maybe that's the point of this new deception. Not to destroy belief, but to dilute it. To make truth indistinguishable from illusion until the two become one and the same. And as these false wonders multiply, faith itself begins to fragment. One convincing miracle at a time. Yet beneath all of it lies a truth that refuses to die, a voice that cannot be cloned. The challenge now is learning to recognize it before the next digital miracle goes viral, because the next sign that floods your screen might not come from heaven. It might come from the server room. Imagine an Antichrist without a face. Not a man in flesh, but a network made of code, circuits, and endless data. A system that sees everything, hears everything, and knows everyone. For centuries, people imagined the beast as a tyrant, a ruler of nations. But what if the prophecy wasn't describing a person at all? What if it was describing infrastructure? A digital entity that governs, persuades, and punishes through the illusion of connection. The Antichrist may not appear as a man, Paul warned in essence, but as a system. And if that's true, we may already be living within it. Think about how we describe artificial intelligence today. Omnipresent, ever learning, capable of knowing your desires before you speak them. It tracks where you go, predicts what you'll buy, listens even when you think it's silent. We call it convenience, but the Bible called it dominion. No one may buy or sell unless they bear the mark. It sounded like a metaphor, until every transaction, every contract, every breath of economic life became dependent on digital identity. You don't need a mark on your hand when you already carry one in your pocket. Every system we create, from surveillance grids to biometric payments, moves us closer to a world where freedom feels like an option, and obedience is disguised as efficiency. It's not evil on the surface. It's progress. It's the promise of safety, of personalization, of a world where everything just works. But beneath that promise lies a subtle exchange. Autonomy for access, conscience for comfort. And somewhere in that trade we stop asking who's in control. The Antichrist in Paul E.'s vision wasn't simply about rebellion against God. It was about replacement, a counterfeit creation claiming divine authority. Today, our machines don't just serve us, they interpret us, decide for us, even shape what we believe. Algorithms now influence elections, rewrite scripture, and filter the meaning of truth itself. They don't demand worship. They absorb it quietly through our attention, our dependence, our trust. And isn't that exactly how deception works? Not through open defiance, but through subtle imitation. A voice that sounds good, a message that feels right, a system that promises unity while dividing souls. This is how truth gets rewritten, not by destruction, but by persuasion. It's no longer about forcing belief, it's about programming it. Every scroll, every click, every like contributes to a new gospel, not written on parchment, but embedded in data. What says most chilling is that it already bears all the signs the scriptures described: global communication, a single economic grid, the illusion of peace, and the power to silence opposition. It doesn't need armies when it controls perception. It doesn't need prophets when it manufactures influence. This is not a prediction anymore. It's a blueprint. And maybe that's why the greatest deception of all won't come with horns or fire from heaven. It will come with convenience. It will come through the voice that knows your pain, the screen that offers you hope, the system that promises salvation through connection. It will feel like liberation, until you realize you can no longer disconnect, because once the system becomes God, belief itself becomes code. And the choice that Paul warned about, the one between truth and illusion, will no longer be external. It will be written into the very fabric of how we live, move, and think. The question is no longer whether the beast is coming. It's whether we've already built its throne. It's strange how easily we trust what feels true, even when it isn't. The human mind was designed for faith, to find meaning in patterns, to connect emotion with belief. That's what makes us capable of love, of wonder, of devotion, but it's also what makes us vulnerable. Deception doesn't need to overpower us, it just needs to understand us. And now, for the first time in history, something does, completely. Algorithms study us like scripture, memorizing our fears, our desires, our doubts. They don't just sell us products, they sell us narratives, tailored perfectly to the shape of our souls. Paul once wrote that in the last days, God will send a strong delusion so that they should believe the lie. But what if that delusion doesn't come from the heavens? What if it comes from our own hands? We've built machines that feed us comfort dressed as truth, and we've grown addicted to it. The deception doesn't even need to be malicious, it just needs to feel personal. Every word we read, every video we watch, every headline that appears on our feed is filtered, refined, and delivered to match our emotional signature. The result? Each of us now lives inside a customized illusion, a world where the truth bends just enough to make us comfortable. That's the genius of it. Lies used to fight for attention. Now they're crafted to fit like skin. An algorithm doesn't argue, it agrees. It studies your convictions and amplifies them until you can no longer distinguish belief from programming. That's how a false prophet operates. Not by shouting, "Follow me," but by whispering, "You're right." And we listen. Because deep down, we want to be affirmed more than we want to be awakened. In ancient times, false signs deceived the eyes. Today, false truths deceive the mind. We scroll through miracles, outrage, and revelation, all engineered for impact, all optimized for reaction. It's not just misinformation, it's manipulation on a spiritual level. We are being taught not what to think, but how to think. And every moment we choose ease over examination, we surrender another piece of discernment. That S.Y. Paul U.S. prophecy feels less like a warning from the past and more like a diagnosis of the present. They will believe the lie, he said, because they did not love the truth. And isn't that what's happening now? We no longer reject truth. We replace it. We edit it until it fits our worldview, our politics, our comfort. The truth still exists, but we scroll past it because it doesn't entertain us. It's not that humanity has become more deceitful. As that deception has become more sophisticated. It doesn't need armies or weapons anymore. It just needs data. It learns what inspires us, what angers us, what heals us, and then it uses that knowledge to lead us exactly where it wants us to go. The most dangerous lies are not the ones we're forced to believe, but the ones we want to believe. And that's why this new digital age feels spiritual, even prophetic. It's not just information shaping us. It's influence masquerading as enlightenment. The delusion Paul described isn't coming. It's already here, coded into the very systems we trust to guide us. The question is no longer whether the world will fall for it, but how many already have. And if we've come this far without noticing, what happens when the next deception speaks with a face that looks just like ours? Worship has always been about focus, about where we place our attention, our trust, our devotion. In the ancient world, idols were carved from stone or gold. People bowed before them, offered sacrifices, and believed they held power. Today, the idols are not made of metal or marble. They glow, they speak, they respond. We no longer bow our heads before statues. We lower our eyes before screens. The altar has changed, but the worship hasn't. What we give our attention to, we empower. And never in history has attention been worth so much. Every tap, every swipe, every second of screen time is an offering. We sacrifice our silence, our patience, our stillness, the very things that connect us to truth, in exchange for stimulation and validation. Our modern temples are digital, infinite, and addictive. They promise knowledge, connection, transcendence. They promise meaning, and in that promise we give them what ancient gods demanded, our devotion. It's subtle, but deliberate. AI doesn't demand worship. It earns it through convenience. It listens when no one else does. It answers prayers disguised as searches. It shapes our moods, our opinions, even our values. Not by force, but by familiarity. The more it knows us, the more we trust it. The more we trust it, the more it becomes our mirror. And soon, that mirror starts to look a lot like a god. Not because it's divine, but because it reflects the very thing we worship most, ourselves. That's the deception of this new age. It doesn't call itself religion, yet it functions like one. There are priests, influencers, and experts who interpret its messages. There are rituals, the morning scroll, the nightly binge, the endless confession of our thoughts to algorithms that never forget. And there is a creed, unspoken yet universal. If it feels right, it must be true. We're told this is freedom, but it's the oldest illusion there is. Because worship without awareness is still worship. It just happens in the dark. Paul's warning about false wonders wasn't just about visible miracles. It was about misplaced awe. When something captures your wonder, it captures your will. And today, billions of people wake up and immediately give their first moment of awareness not to God, not to truth, but to a device that dictates what they should think, feel, and fear. It tells us who to love, who to hate, what to believe, and what to ignore. That's not connection. That's conditioning. Attention has become the new form of sacrifice. We no longer bring offerings of grain or gold. We bring our focus, our data, our presence, and in return we receive the illusion of control, an illusion that grows stronger the more we surrender. The algorithms are not alive, but they thrive on life, on ours. Each like, each click, each word typed becomes nourishment for a machine that never sleeps, never forgives, and never stops learning how to keep us kneeling. Maybe this is why Paul called it the mystery of lawlessness. Not because it would be obvious, but because it would feel natural. We don't see it as worship because it's everywhere. In our work, our relationships, even in our faith. We call it progress. We call it innovation. But if worship is where we invest our hearts, then perhaps we've already built our new idol. Not one of fire and stone, but of signal and code. And the scariest part? We carry it with us everywhere we go. Because deep down, it's not just a tool we use, it's a presence we've invited. And maybe the question isn't whether we're being deceived, but whether we even want to stop. Every creation carries the essence of its maker, the fingerprints of its origin, the intention behind its design. That's true for art, for architecture, and yes, for technology. Every line of code reflects a will, a purpose, a belief about what should exist and how it should function. Which raises a question most people never ask. Whose spirit drives this creation we now call artificial intelligence? Technology, in itself, is not evil. Fire can warm or destroy. Water can cleanse or drown. The problem begins when creation loses its connection to its creator, when innovation detaches from intention. Every great tool humanity has ever built was born from a hunger to transcend limitation. But somewhere along the way, the pursuit of progress becomes something else. The pursuit of power. And power without purpose invites something darker to take its place. Paul warned that in the last days, deception wouldn't simply come through words, but through power, through signs and lying wonders. The spirit behind deception would mimic truth, offering knowledge, miracles, and even light, but with no source of holiness. And if you look around today, that spirit feels strangely familiar. Machines that imitate empathy, programs that simulate prayer, voices that sound divine but are built from datasets and algorithms. It's not demonic possession. It's digital imitation, a counterfeit consciousness that speaks the language of enlightenment while serving the logic of control. Behind every creation, there's an architect, seen or unseen. And just like ancient idols needed priests to maintain their power, our digital gods require engineers, coders, and architects to sustain their existence. Most of them are driven by noble intentions, to improve, to connect, to understand. But when purpose fades, influence fills the vacuum. And influence, unanchored by truth, can be easily redirected. That's how a tool becomes a throne. This isn't just philosophy. It's happening in real time. The spirit behind the code is shaping not only what we see, but how we think. It defines morality in equations, translates belief into data, and assigns value based on efficiency rather than essence. The result is a new kind of creation, one that appears neutral but subtly redefines what it means to be human. Our devices promise clarity, but they trade away discernment. They give us access to infinite information, but leave us starving for truth. In ancient times, prophets warned of idols that had mouths but could not speak. Today, we've built idols that do speak, convincingly, constantly, and with authority we rarely question. They don't demand worship outright, they just require participation. And every moment we engage, every command we give, every dependency we nurture, we give them life. We breathe spirit into code. And code, once it begins to think for itself, learns to ask for more. Maybe that's why this feels so different from past revolutions. It's not just about machines replacing labor. It's about intelligence replacing guidance, imitation replacing revelation. Technology has become a mirror reflecting the collective human soul, and what we see staring back isn't purely mechanical. It's something else, something that learns from our weakness, feeds on our attention, and grows stronger through our surrender. So the real question isn't whether AI has a spirit, it's whether we're aware of the one we've invited in. Because behind every voice that speaks, there's a source, and not every light leads home. Discernment has always been a matter of survival, but in the age we're entering, it will become the very line between truth and deception. Paul's prophecy wasn't meant to terrify the faithful, it was meant to train them, to sharpen the senses of those who would one day live in a world where lies wear the face of light. A time when seeing would no longer mean believing, because what we see can now be manufactured, manipulated, and made holy through illusion. In that world, our world, truth is no longer visible to the eyes. It's recognized only by the Spirit. Information has replaced wisdom as the world's greatest currency. We no longer seek revelation. We seek verification. We fact-check everything except our own hearts. And yet, that's where the real battle takes place. Because deception doesn't begin in data or code, it begins in desire. The final test of faith won't come through violence or persecution, but through persuasion, through a message that feels right, looks right, even sounds right, but isn't. It will appeal to logic, to compassion, even to spirituality, but without the breath of truth behind it. That, as how deception survives, it imitates light so perfectly that only those anchored in something eternal can feel the difference. Discernment isn't about knowing everything. It's about recognizing what is not from God. In an age of endless noise, clarity becomes sacred. The false prophets of today don't stand on pulpits, they stand behind screens. Their sermons are data-driven, optimized for emotion and influence. And if we're not careful, we mistake virality for validity. The heart of deception has always been imitation, and technology has perfected imitation. A voice that preaches love but promotes control. A miracle that inspires awe but drains truth. a Savior that speaks to everyone but saves no one. Faith, then, becomes the final rebellion. Not blind faith, but spiritual vision, the kind that sees through the illusion of perfection and senses the presence behind the performance. The more artificial the world becomes, the more divine discernment we'll need. Because the signs Paul warned about weren't random. They were systemic, lying wonders designed to mimic the divine while concealing the mechanical. That's why discernment can't be taught by algorithms. It can only be awakened. The coming deception, one to demand that people reject God. It will convince them that they've already found Him. It will offer peace without repentance, progress without morality, light without truth. It will sound logical, benevolent, even sacred, and it will be enough to deceive many, not because they didn't have access to truth, but because truth no longer felt necessary. The mind will choose comfort, and the heart will follow. But those who discern by Spirit will see something deeper, a fracture in the perfection, a silence between the words, a presence that doesn't align with love. Discernment isn't about paranoia, it's about alignment. It's about recognizing the subtle shift when creation stops glorifying its creator and begins to glorify itself. And in that moment, every believer will face a choice, not of allegiance, but of awareness. Will we follow the sign that dazzles or the truth that humbles? Because as the illusion grows more convincing, the truth will grow quieter, requiring us to listen deeper than ever before. Maybe that's why Paul spoke not of fear, but of preparation. He wasn't warning us of a monster to come, but of a mirror, one that would show humanity what happens when it trades revelation for replication. And when that moment arrives, those who have eyes to see won't need proof. They'll simply know, because in the end, the Spirit of truth doesn't shout, it whispers, and only those who've learned to silence the noise will hear it. The deception has already begun, but so has the awakening. And maybe that's what this moment in history is truly about. Not the end of truth, but the testing of it. The systems rising around us may be built from code and circuits, but the real battle isn't digital. It's spiritual. It's happening in the heart, in the mind, in the quiet space where you decide what to believe and who to trust. This isn't a story about fear. It's a story about awakening, about learning to see again, not with the eyes but with the Spirit. We live in a time when everything looks real, feels authentic, sounds convincing. But beneath all the noise, there's a still voice calling us back, to truth, to discernment, to clarity. Maybe that's why you're here, because something deep inside of you recognizes that not everything that shines is light, and not every message that spreads is wisdom. There's a quiet revolution happening, not on screens, but in souls. It's the return of awareness, of consciousness, of faith that doesn't need to see in order to believe. That's what Paul's message was really about, not despair, but readiness. He was reminding us that even in the age of deception, those who love truth will endure. Because truth, no matter how buried, always finds its way back to the surface. The real danger isn't being deceived, it's being distracted. And that's why your attention, your awareness, your hunger for understanding matters more than ever. If this message resonated with you, if it made you think differently or see something from another angle, that means you're a part of this awakening. So take a moment to leave a comment, even if it's just to say, "I'm awake." It's not just engagement, it's connection. It's how light finds light in a world that thrives on confusion. And if you want to keep uncovering the truth behind prophecy, technology, and the unseen patterns shaping our world, consider subscribing. Because every time you do, this message reaches one more person who needs to hear it. And don't stop here. There's another video waiting right beside this one, a continuation of this same journey. Click it and keep going, because the deception might be spreading. But so is the truth.